Hello, everyone. Anyone who's in the back, feel free to move down front. It's not like church. You don't have to sit in the back. We have plenty of seats here. So, excellent. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the League of Women Voters. This is called our opening meeting because we do run on the school year schedule. So this is the opening of our year. Just in case you are not a member, which I see there are some folks who aren't members, the Acton area chapter serves Acton, Boxborough, Littleton, Maynard, and Stowe. Most of our members are from Acton. And I'd just like to alert people that we will be holding a similar meeting introducing Mr. Light and the new town administrator in Boxborough on October 3rd. So if you know any folks from Boxborough or who might have missed tonight's meeting who would like to check out the superintendent, there'll be another chance in Boxborough in October. We do welcome members, new members at any time, so if you're intrigued after tonight's event and you're not a member, you can speak to any one of us, and I know some people are being actively recruited as we speak. Just looking at Bernice over here. Yes, we do welcome men and women members, though of course most of us are women. So we also have student members. So we are a grassroots organization dedicated to encouraging informed voting. So of course, we are doing voter registration drives at the back to school nights throughout this month. We have people there helping folks learn how to register. We have candidate forums at the state and local levels. And in fact, we had two very successful forums for the 3rd congressional district with the 10 candidates. We had a forum in Concord in July, and in August we had 800 folks come to Chelmsford High School, which was very, very gratifying to see an audience give a group of candidates a standing ovation at the end, because they were all civilized and polite and actually answered the questions. So that's the kind of forums we like to run. We do have one coming up October 18th, which is a Thursday, in this room, which will be for the state senate and state rep seat, which was Corey Atkins' seat, because there is a contest there. And then look for a date in late October for the congressional candidates, probably in Chelmsford. Those details are still being worked out. So we do a lot of voter candidate forums, voter guides online, and there was for this primary season a voter guide through the State League site, which was very helpful in that 10-person race. And you'll see the Vote Tuesday signs, and town meeting starts Monday. I think that's what it says. They're very similar, but those get put out just as reminders. And we have had public forums, such as last year we did a series on the role of the press in democracy. And just to be clear, we are nonpartisan. We don't support or oppose political parties or candidates, but we do take positions on issues only after we have studied the issue and come to some consensus about what our position is. We have positions on social policy, things such as healthcare, education, the environment, all the government things, voting, and in fact, this fall and winter, the State League of Massachusetts is doing a study on the ballot initiative process. So if you're a government nerd, you really want to be joining into that. And we do have a group here in our chapter who will be working on that study. So any member is welcome to participate in that. We also, in our local chapter here, have a book group that reads current nonfiction and meets monthly, and you do not have to have read the book. I keep hearing this. Don't worry if you haven't read the book. You can still go for some good discussion. We have a civics bee in this room, 100 high school kids and 30-some adults getting pumped on questions about government and history. It's a ton of fun. First Tuesday. So if you're interested and curious, there's a group that meets at Bagels Plus on the first Tuesday morning of the month, and we are looking to have an evening gathering at some point, so be on the lookout for that. We will also be holding a forum with Green Acton, co-sponsoring with them on Thursday, October 25th at 7 p.m. in the Public Safety Building. What is 1,4-dioxane? Should we be worried? And what is being done about it? So that is meant to be an informational forum. So if you're interested and or concerned about our water, that will be a good place to learn stuff. I think that's about it for my announcements. So this evening, we will start off with each of our new employees, I guess, speaking briefly, and then we'll open it up for questions from the floor, which we have a microphone right there at the podium. So for starting off, I think we'll start, Diane Baum, who is a member of the school committee, will introduce the superintendent.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for having this event. I am thrilled to have the pleasure of introducing Peter Light, our new superintendent of schools. I chaired the selection committee, so I feel like I've known him for longer than most people in this district. He comes to us from Franklin, which is a suburban public school system with about the same number of people that we have. He was the assistant superintendent there and a longtime principal. He partnered when he was principal with the Massachusetts School Building Authority to build what is the most beautiful high school I've ever laid my eyes on in Franklin. He has a bachelor's degree in music and a master's in performance from Yale. When he interviewed, I have to say, he knocked the socks off the screening committee, and he continues to do that now that he's here. You walk out of a meeting and you are inspired to do your best work. So it's my pleasure to turn the mic over to Superintendent Peter Light.
All right, well, Diane, thank you, and now I'm more nervous than I was before. That's a high mark to try and live up to. I'll start by saying it's just been a wonderful reception to Acton and Boxborough. I've had an opportunity to meet a variety of people through the school community, but also out in the communities. John and I have started to develop a relationship and met a handful of times, and I'm just really have been taken aback by the passion that the community has for education, and in particular public schools. And that is certainly what attracted me to AB through the interview process and looking at the community originally. But I think beyond that, the values that the community has around, in the school community in particular, had developed around equity, wellness, and engagement, spoke directly to a lot of the interests and background that I had. I talked to our new faculty originally, I talked to our administrators, and I had an opportunity to talk to all of our faculty and staff across the district at opening day, what feels like maybe 2 months ago, but it was actually about 2 weeks ago. I talked a little bit, about some of my background that people may not know about me. I actually started my school career in Panama. We lived right outside the Canal Zone for probably the better part of 3.5 to 4 years in the early and mid-1970s. And that gave me a very deep appreciation of kind of being in a very diverse setting and being the child coming back that maybe was viewed a little bit differently because I did speak 2 languages fluently, and in the 1970s there really wasn't an appreciation in a lot of different communities around what that meant. So I lost all of my Spanish coming back, and that has influenced me deeply throughout my career, thinking about how do we make sure that when we have schools, they're welcoming to children of all backgrounds and cultures, and make sure that students don't feel like they need to lose a piece of their own identity in order to fit in with the prevailing culture of the school community. So that was a focus of my talk to our faculty and staff coming back on the opening day. It certainly is something that I want to continue to talk about as we go through. We have been able to start that conversation and reach out to some different community groups in the early part of my work with Fostering Racial Justice Group. It was a wonderful meeting that we were able to attend over at the Boxborough, I think it was the community center. And just we've continued to grow some of those relationships to support that work around the district. It's been wonderful. Wonderful people here. It's been so supportive with the school committee. I'm just thrilled to be here and happy to answer any questions that you have as we proceed through the night. So thank you.
Thank you. And now, select person, Katie Green, will introduce our town manager.
All right, thank you, Joanne, and to League for having this event tonight. I'm Katie Green. I'm the current chair of the Board of Selectmen in Acton, and I have the honor tonight of introducing our new town manager, John Mangiarotti. So John comes to us. He was formerly the deputy town manager in Andover, and prior to that, the assistant town manager in Westford. I know there was a little part of me when we were doing the interviews that really enjoyed sort of the synchronicity of John coming and having a background in Westford, where our previous town manager, Steve Ledoux, came from as well. So John's been in the job for about 10 weeks now, something like that, and has really hit the ground running. I assume most of you have met him or seen him at some event or meeting in town. I think he told me on Tuesday night you were listing off the number of meetings I went to, and it was about 5 or 6 that he was able to stop by. So he's really doing a lot to try to get to know all of the different communities in our town, as well as get to know all of the various departments and functions that we run as a town. So he's been doing a wonderful job, and we're really excited to have him. And with that, I will turn over to John.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight, and thank you for coming out to meet us. It's an honor that you're all here. It's been, I started on July 1st. There was a little dispute about that at the school committee meeting earlier this week. So I actually did start before you, but because I think you were July 2nd, but we can sort that out later. But it's really been a pleasure getting to know everyone in the community. The staff that I walked into town hall working with was very professional, is very professional, and made my transition very seamless. The engagement and the volunteerism that is present in every part of what we do here in Acton really it makes it exciting and interesting, and it's been a great experience. I usually don't like to talk about myself, but I was just going to do that for a second, and then I'd look forward to hearing questions that you have, because I could tell you a lot of things about what's going on in town, but I'll wait to see what questions you have to target those responses. So I think what it's important to me is I grew up in a household where my parents were very involved in local government, and it made a big impact on me. My mother served on the school committee for 20 years. In the city of Attleboro, and during most of that time, or half of that time at least, she was a Spanish teacher in North Attleboro, the neighboring town. So I got to hear about things that she was experiencing as a part of the teachers union in a small town next to us, and hear about the things that she was dealing with as the chair of the school committee in the city of Attleboro, which they just had a new high school approved, which is exciting for the city. My father was an attorney, city solicitor, and for many communities. So I really had a lot of that fabric of my childhood and my young adult of learning and experiencing local government. And it's helped me to have a passion for what we do here and what you're all interested in and what the league is interested in. And so I'm excited to bring that here and work with all of you. Thank you.
Yes, yes. So while people are forming their questions, I'll just start you off with, so you've both been here not that many weeks, just a little short time. What is something that has surprised you about our community? And turn on your thing.
I try not to turn the microphone on until I have something that can come out of my mouth in an intelligible way. I think I spoke about it a little before, but the level of passion for education in the public schools is something that I knew about coming into the role, and it's what attracted me to the community. But getting to speak with so many people who, and John spoke to this a little bit, are willing to give their time and energy in becoming engaged in the schools has really been breathtaking. It's wonderful. People, really pay attention to what the schools do at a deep, deep level, and that's something that, I think I was thinking about coming into the role, but really have been taken aback by in a positive way. So it's been wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. The one thing that I found out today that was very surprising is that we have a radio station, 94.9 on your local dial, so tune in. I think it's a 60-watt station, so it doesn't have a great reach, but it's another tool we have. Seriously, one of the things that I didn't really know about, and I live in Westford, which isn't far away, but I didn't really know about the resources and the services and the level of all the great things we have here. I didn't know much about Narrow Park. I didn't really know much about the Arboretum. I didn't know about all the other great services that people here get to enjoy, and I'm really happy to be a part of it and work to continue to make those services what the community enjoys and works on. So.
Okay, so if you have a question, go to the right, to the podium. Make sure the red light is on. If you could introduce yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Good evening. I'm Dr. John Blute, and I've been a resident of Acton for 38 years. And I'm hoping that this not-so-easy question directed to our new superintendent will be taken positively, but I think it's very, very important in the current educational system that we have, not only here in Acton, but throughout the United States. And that has to do with the increasing level of anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation, not only in high school, but also starting in middle school. As I'm sure you're well aware, it is a very challenging entity in terms of, are the programs that have been developed effective in decreasing the risk of suicide? And this has touched the Acton community as well as communities all over Massachusetts. So my question, sir, in the most positive sense is, as you've explored this in your new position, do you feel comfortable with the current programs that are in place, or do you think that this needs to expand and be improved?
So I think it's certainly been on my mind because, as the entire community knows, we did have a student die by suicide early in the summer. And, you know, that's something that I knew was going to be something on the top of my mind coming into the district. I didn't expect it to be that soon. I think that I've been extraordinarily impressed with the level of thought and work that the district has done to make sure that students have the right protective factors in place and the level of programming that they've put into place over the last few years. Do I ever think that we're doing enough? The answer is probably no. And we always have to continue to explore other options. Just some things, I'll start maybe at the younger years and just give you an overview. The district has been working with something called Responsive Classroom, which is it's not a curricular program, it's kind of a way of being for school classrooms that helps teachers develop themselves professionally to be able to really respond to all students' needs. And I don't think that protecting students from anxiety, depression, and, as you said, suicidal ideation, that doesn't start in the middle and high school years. That actually has to start in the youngest years. It really is a preschool protective factor. So at our preschool, we have a Ready to Play program and Ready to Learn program that started. We've expanded that into elementary school, where we are working with Responsive Classroom. We have outstanding counseling support through all the grades. There is a screening program in place, which is called Signs of Suicide. Many districts implement that at 2 grade levels. Acton-Boxborough has actually chosen to implement that at 3 different grade levels. It's really for upper level students. You know, I've also been positively impacted by learning how many students are comfortable approaching our faculty in the junior high school and high school years, talking about other friends that they may have concerns about. And, you know, the way that our faculty goes about working with those students and making sure that there's a climate of trust, that students can come forward and be able to speak about other students that they may have concerns about, I think is really important. I can't tell you that I know every nuance of the program. I do know the district has really focused on two key initiatives. One is prevention and the other is postvention. I talked a little bit about some of the prevention work, but postvention is equally important because we know that if we do have an incident in the community, how we respond to that is critically important to supporting the rest of our student population and the community to heal appropriately. So the district is partnered with Riverside Trauma out of Needham, and they provide a lot of services. So when we have had some of our students die over the last few years, they respond very quickly. They come in, they meet with our administrative team and our counseling staff at the school immediately, within hours. They develop plans to not only support the family, but support students in the school, identify any other students who may be at risk because they had particularly close relationships. They spend time with our counseling staff and administrators making calls to all of those families to make sure they're alerted, and then they host various drop-in centers for our students and staff and parents to be able to really process their feelings around that. So, you know, I don't think there's a perfect answer to all of it, and we do need to keep exploring. I did have an opportunity to meet with a number of the professionals in the field that we do consult with just around our planning. I will say that from an independent lens, the various organizations like Riverside Trauma are very confident in the work that we do, and we have good processes in place. But with that said, we have to keep exploring opportunities because I think regardless of whether it's Acton, Boxborough, or Lexington, or Franklin, or Boston, the number one thing that educators are saying and parents are seeing is that student social and emotional needs are changing, and we're seeing a profile of students that we have not seen before in classrooms. I'm sure that technology and, you know, the world since kind of the recession in 2008, at least on a personal level, is where we saw that start. But we're certainly seeing it impact kids in classrooms, and whether or not it's protecting kids from the most serious harm or it's just making sure our schools are good environments so kids can continue to learn, it's all one program. Sure, you're welcome.
You want to leave that one?
Yeah.
Or would you like to add?
I'm very impressed with that response. Thank you. Seriously, I think you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
Another question. Don't be shy. Just to hit the button there. There you go.
I see. Okay. My name is Audrey Osborne, or in Espanol, Osborne. I have two questions. The first one is, with the increasing number of families who speak Portuguese as a first language at home, as one who speaks, se fala portugués mais ou menos, I would like to know if you're planning to add, and I'm asking at the request of a family I know quite well, if you are planning to add some staff members who are proficient in Portuguese. There was a recent incident that I know about and can't reveal here, but it would have been very helpful to have someone available and not Google Translator who spoke Portuguese. Has there any plans to increase that? And the second question is about, from some of us who are Columbus Day, as you know, has become a little bit controversial, but we also feel that perhaps there was not a lot of research done. I went through the archives and I couldn't find the research on the elimination of Columbus Day, which for those of us, I can tell you what the 1950s was as a child of an immigrant, and si parlo italiano. It's a different type of holiday, and some of us would like to see a reconsideration of that. Those are my two questions. And the third one is, responsive classroom is the best thing that one could ever ask for. As one who uses it every single day, it's a wonderful, for those of you who are parents, it works. Those of you who are educators, if you haven't tried it, it's the best thing I have ever seen. I've been an educator, multilingual for many, many years. So thank you for looking at responsive classroom.
So I'm going to start by saying I wish I had more concrete answers for you on this. I think it's actually great feedback for me to take as part of my entry process to hear that, but I can't tell you that I know of any specific plans. I know that one of our broad goals is to continually increase the diversity of our educator workforce. That's something that our administrators in the district have actually recognized for the last few years now that needs to be a strategy. We have not targeted that there's any one particular language we want to increase. We do spend a lot and make sure that we have translators available for families, and we actually have redesigned a lot of our communications platforms, including kind of our direct email platform to parents and our website, to be much more highly functional so that families can access our communications in their native language. I'll certainly take the feedback and bring that back to our ELL coordinator, be able to talk about that more, but I don't have an answer for you, not to dodge it. You know, in terms of elimination of Columbus Day, that's another one I just don't have the history on within the district, but I can certainly take back and have discussions about, but thank you.
I think there were some other people who were kind of ready. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Franny Osmond. I had a couple of questions for Peter, or actually just suggestions about, I know. It's just, I met John before, and he so nicely came to the Commission on Disabilities and met with us. And it's about communication.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one is that ever since my third child graduated, I felt like totally cut off from the schools and haven't really known what's going on. And it would be nice if we had continued, and for people who don't have kids, more communication from the schools about what's going on. Especially when there's a crisis or something. I always hear about it from just a parent of a school child forwarding me the email, and then I'll share it with somebody on my committee or something. But it would be nice if there was much more awareness from the schools that there are all these other people who do care about the students and the teachers and the schools. So, and the other, and I'll just come and talk to you about this privately. I want to make sure that we do a better job of letting school parents know about all the transportation programs that we have in town. We sort of have been separately trying to solve some problems. You know, some students take the Dial-A-Ride, and some students take the CAT bus, but not as many as if they all knew about it. And then suddenly we had a late bus again, which we've been wanting to have for years. A year or two ago, suddenly it appeared again, and from being a member of the public, not involved in the schools, it just came as a complete surprise, even to the transportation committee, even to the transportation coordinator of the town. So I would like to sort of get the communication about transportation going both ways.
Sure.
Better, and I'll come talk to you about it separately.
Great.
Thanks.
You know, so I think that's great feedback on communication around transportation. Just to comment briefly on overall communication, you know, one thing we are going to be starting up again, and I think there was a couple-year lapse in this, but we will be doing a quarterly newsletter, and we are exploring ways to get that newsletter out to the community as well as our own parent and family organizations. So please look for that. We're hoping to start that up probably around November, early December, so we have an opportunity to get going. The other thing I'll say, and John has been great about this, because we've already communicated several times, and we're trying to work on a process that if there's an incident in the community, we can actually collaborate around what a press release might look like, so that there's broad communication not only within the school community but the town as well. John has been absolutely fantastic in helping to facilitate that work, so please look for more of that, and that's certainly something we recognize and we hope continues.
Thank you, and I did appreciate when there was something that happened at Narra Park, when you sent that out, I thought, well, this is the kind of communication that's really great. So thanks, John. See, I'm talking to John.
Hi, my name is Nancy Tavernier. I wanted to continue on to the communication theme here. I've noticed instant changes with the town website. I get many more notices about what's going on, announcements, even photos have been added. I'm really encouraged, and I was wondering what plans you have for increasing communication among the town residents, the town boards, town staff, and certainly Peter can comment too, because I week ago discovered you have a brand-new website, so, and that looked very good. And I know John has a background in communication and electronic things like GIS and so forth, so I'm wondering what your plans are going forward.
Thank you for the question. I'm really excited that the work on the website was underway as I was getting here. Mark Hald, the assistant town manager, has done a great job in trying to improve the offerings that we have on our website, and something that not just Mark, but the entire staff has been very receptive to is not just putting out information through our website with the email list that is associated with it, but then using that content that we put on our website and pushing it out to different channels through social media, which more and more people are getting a lot of their news and information from social media channels. So if we can get into that, into their feed and draw them to the website where the rest of our information is, we found it as a good way to get people to know what's going on. And just what you mentioned with the quarterly newsletter, we do a quarterly newsletter too. It goes in the tax bill. We're also going to put that in the social media in our website, but I would love to distribute yours through our channels as well once that comes to fruition. So that's something we can definitely collaborate on. And any ideas that you have, we'd love to hear it. One other thing I should mention is that our social media presence will be growing this fall. There's people that are very excited to start speaking through that medium to the public, and we have a working group that's been established to do it in a careful and thoughtful way.
And I think I forgot to mention that this event that we're at now is being live streamed on Facebook, as well as it will be available on ActonTV, I assume on their page as well as on TV. So if you have friends, you can share now through Facebook that this event happened in case they weren't able to attend.
My name is Ann Chang, and I'm concerned about the budget. And I want to know what sorts of capital budgets items you think you're going to be able to get past town meeting, and how we're going to be able to pay for things like a fire station and schools at the same time.
Thank you for the question. I just started the budget process with our team, and I'm looking forward to seeing you later this month at our first ALG meeting. So I think that's something that we're going to talk about, specifically capital, and what our capacity is and what the priorities are, how to collaborate with the capital needs of the schools. It's definitely something that is on the agenda for this fall. I don't have a specific answer for you at this time, but I encourage you to participate in the public meetings that we have and the other parts of the process throughout the year.
I also think that's a great question, because I think it's something that's on everyone's minds, and I've certainly heard that throughout the community with various people that I've met with. We're doing a couple things in terms of trying to speak directly to that as we implement kind of a strategy toward that end. We are working on a 5-year capital plan so that we can make explicit what we need to have accomplished within the school district. There was a draft of that completed at the end of the last school year, but we're currently forming a committee that's going to include both school committee, and we're actually inviting a member of each finance committee from both communities to sit on that committee as well, to revise that plan, hone it further, and make sure that it is a feasible plan as we move forward. And then John and I have been communicating about some strategies that we can actually bring the town and school boards together to look at the two capital plans that we might have in place and make sure that they can speak effectively to each other, and not create such a burden on either of the communities that it's not feasible to implement over time. So I don't have specific answers for you because we're actually just starting that planning process, but what we're trying to do is make sure that we have the right people at the table that can represent the needs of a variety of community members, so that as we go forward, we're making sure that we're sensitive to what those needs are.
I have a follow-on question for both of you. We're going to need a 2.5 override. Do you have a plan B? if the 2.5 override fails?
If an override is to be considered, I would believe we'd have a plan A, B, and C. But it's not, I haven't determined that that's necessary at this point. But I look forward to talking with you and the rest of the public about that this budget season.
Yeah, and I also want to make sure that, I recognize we talk about the 2.5 override because we're thinking building projects. There is a nuance to some of that in that when we take out a debt service for the school building projects, that actually gets retired over time when the debt is paid off, as opposed to a Proposition 2.5 override, which is a tax increase that then stays forever. I know that may or may not feel good at times, but I also think it's a really important factor that, when we do take out a bond to build a school, it does end as soon as that school is paid off, and the town does not assume that debt forever.
My name is Bernice Braham. Most people know here that my usual mantra is affordable housing, but actually I want to ask a question which is related to Ann's question. Since I've moved to town, I've noticed increasingly every year there are more businesses that are closing and fewer businesses that are coming to town. I have to say I was very disheartened when I read recently that the Chocolatier is going to close, because if any business would succeed, it would be a business that sold chocolate. I'd like to know what you as the town manager have as thoughts to go against the current trend, which of course is to even close up malls and have all shopping be online. But what can we do in Acton to promote new businesses coming into town?
Thank you. This is something that I actually met and discussed with the Finance Committee earlier this week. Something that this community has been successful with over the last few years is creating incentives for businesses to not just move here, but stay here. For example, there's a company called Associated Environmental Systems who recently relocated here and has invested a lot in the community. Insulet is a large company that's going to bring about 1,000 jobs to the community, and they're going to have a presence over in Nagog Park, and they'll be opening next year. So those are two businesses that have come to town. If there are particular businesses, I can look into the Chocolatier. I don't know the specific circumstances about that, but I do agree that that is a loss. But the Economic Development Committee, we have an Economic Development Director who works every day to try to understand what opportunities businesses are looking for and help to facilitate their presence here, either keeping them here or getting them to come here. But it's definitely something that we have to work on, and we're committed to doing that.
There we go.
Hello, my name is Christina Richlick, and I just wanted to follow up on Dr. Blut's question to Peter Light, but actually turn it to John. I know firsthand how much the schools have done for years and years in terms of increasing psychological support and lots of programming related to anxiety, depression, suicide for our students. What I think is important to remember is that kids are only in school for 12% of their life. And the other 88%, they are living in our town, they're with their parents, they're in the community. And I do think our communities have been through a difficult time in the last few years, but I know that there has been an effort by lots of community organizations to form a group called AB Cares, which is basically trying to address a community response to suicide. So I'm hoping to ask John if you would at least consider learning more about that organization and possibly having the town commit to taking it to the next level.
Yes, thank you. I've worked with Laura Ducharme, our community services coordinator, and our health director, Cheryl Wall, And they're very involved with the organization AB Cares, and it's something that is important to the community. And I believe I'm attending a meeting of that organization that's coming up to try to learn more about it and understand exactly what taking it to the next level may entail. So thank you for the question.
Hi, I'm Sahana Purohit. I know this is kind of a generic question. You know, you guys already did say that you're very impressed with the volunteers in town. But my question is, you know, how do you encourage younger generation of, you know, residents to volunteer in this town? Because we don't see a whole lot of people coming out to give their time, and we all know that, you know, the state government is best run by volunteers giving their time. Do you have any suggestions?
So how to attract, so I'm clear on the question, younger people, or what was the?
Yeah, younger residents in the
just
town.
different people.
Different people, yeah.
I think that there's a group in town, I believe the Volunteer Coordinating Committee, that works very hard at that initiative to try to get people excited. I understand they're launching a PR campaign, so stay tuned for that in collaboration with ActonTV. But I think that just some of the things that we've talked about already, communicating with different audiences through different means that we're trying out, I think gets people to be more aware of what's happening. A lot of times people will get involved with local government if they drive by something and what's going on here? And then maybe they'll go home and check online, and all of a sudden they're into it. So sometimes people don't drive by something and they never get that opportunity. But if you're giving them things in their social media feed, or if there's information out there that they notice, I think it helps to create awareness of some of the exciting things that we're doing and some of the challenges that we really need help from our citizens to solve. And so we're going to continue to do that. And not just that, but like AB Cares and other organizations out there, I think we do our best to try to get out and meet with those organizations and organizations like that to understand and attract people to work with us on issues that are important to them. Because a lot of times there's activities going on and people don't realize that the town is invested in that same initiative until you make that connection. So that's what we work hard to do. Thanks.
I think from a school standpoint, at an adult level, it's making sure that parents know what the opportunities are to support the school community. And I think that can often take the form of booster organizations, PTSOs, but it also works as we do things like through our school building committee, and we talk about our visioning process for, you know, the school building project that's actually just kicking off now. I think is an exciting opportunity for some families to get involved in providing some meaningful input into what that new school facility might look like in the future. I think on a student level, you know, what students see celebrated is often what they value and come to value. And I think one of the things the district does really well is to celebrate student volunteerism, and they do a community service awards program every year for the high school. And I think that that's really important. So I think the more we can continue to celebrate our students who do give back to the community in a variety of ways, I think the more that volunteerism takes hold over time.
Question for Peter. I'm curious about how the new start time's working out.
So anecdotally, we've heard wonderful things from our students and families about being able to have a little bit less stress in the morning as they get up. I actually just talked to a couple people coming in who have high school age students, and they said that their mornings are just vastly different now, that they can sleep until 7. The students are waking up on their own as opposed to having to be woken up by alarm clock after alarm clock after alarm clock after alarm clock, and then 2 parents. And that there's just an opportunity to spend a little bit of time as a family before they head off to school. So I think we've heard a lot of positives around start times. We continue to work through some of the challenges around transportation that we knew would be a trade-off to being able to implement start times. we're to a point now, we got to probably about 98, 99% of our bus stops, and we have about 1,500 different bus stops across both communities, to give you a sense of the scope. But about 99% of those are running effectively, and what we're really doing now is working with individual families to try and see how we can make student experiences better where we're able to.
Are you finding more kids are riding the bus than they have in the past?
We're really not quite ready to start collecting that data. We do bus counts annually, several times a year. I think it's 3 times a year the district does bus counts, but we need to let the first 2 to 3 weeks of school settle a little bit. And I think what we're finding now is, our bus drivers are learning all of their routes. Our students are understanding, what the pickup time will be, and times are normalizing a little bit more. So I think as we get through the next few weeks to a month, we'll be able to know more about that.
Well, I hope more will ride the bus. I'm sort of the neighborhood snoop, and I've got 4 houses across the street, each have junior high and high school. It's amazing to me how 3 out of 4 just couldn't get to the bus every day, and their mothers had to drive them, and they didn't even carpool.
Yeah.
I mean, so you've got 3 cars taking kids that just could have gotten out the door 5 minutes earlier. So I'm hoping that the buses will be used fully with this new change. I don't see any excuse not to.
We have very, very high ridership, particularly at elementary school.
Yes.
And then at the middle and high school, there's a little bit of space on the buses, but there's still ridership.
Well,
So
I
we're
hope it
transporting
increases.
almost, probably an average of about 3,500 to 4,000 students a day.
Great, good.
So, hi, John Sonner. I'm a member of the league, and I've got a question for each of you that's, for the most part, the same thing. But I'd be interested to hear about coordination with local towns and school districts and your relationships with them, or what your expectations are in developing relationships with them. Thank you.
I have it's been, as a new manager, it's been a lot of fun, and there happens to be a lot of new managers in the region. So it's been a lot of fun for me to reach out to our neighboring communities and try to establish relationships. And it's something that I think there's a lot of benefit to that for our community, to have good working relationships with our neighbors. And so I'm working very hard on that. Actually today, or this week, we're submitting a regional grant application for a big project that I hope is successful. I want to thank Senator Eldridge, who's in the back, for offering his support to that initiative. But I think just like we're working very hard to collaborate with the school district, I think working with our neighbors on shared interests is really important for us to try to do. And not at the expense of our services or our needs, but there's a lot of things that we can work on that are mutually beneficial. And the challenge is just finding the right niche and the right places to focus your energies. So I'm working very hard on that as I'm starting out here.
And I think in terms of our strategies, John and I have really tried to establish a strong relationship early on. So we've already met a couple times. We're planning to meet monthly to make sure that we continue to have a dialogue about how we can continue to coordinate our efforts around supporting everyone in the community. But then the other strategy that we try to do is make sure that we have good representation and communication between the various boards and committees that take place. So, there's regular attendance by FinCom members at the school committee meetings. Likewise, we have school committee representatives to the finance committees and board of selectmen. And just make sure that the communication chain stays strong. I think the ALG group is going to be incredibly important for that as we both start being new. I think there's a steep learning curve associated with how the budget process works, and having that type of intercommittee process already in place will make that a lot smoother, I think, as we progress through the season. So I'm just looking forward to continuing a lot of that work and making sure that we have, regular communication with us.
I just wanted to ask this question. Before I start, we really hope that you guys stay here for 10, 20, 30 years in our town. But, looking into the future, Have you guys thought about what kind of legacy would you like to leave behind in Acton? And of course, that requires a lot of preparation from now on, so just curious to know.
So I'm actually going to come right back to our opening day with our faculty that we had about 2 weeks ago. And I really said that, my hope is that our students experience 4 things, and that there are 4 real critical experiences our students have in our schools. And this is what I would hope my legacy is. I want each student to make sure that they can articulate back to us that they felt loved for who they are, that they felt valued for the individual and unique person that they are and their background. I want them to be challenged at an appropriate level and feel like the schools were able to push them beyond what they thought they could achieve. And then I want them to make sure that they're supported by the schools as well. And so I think, we know that if we're challenging students appropriately, every student is going to struggle at some point with something. And we need to have that safety net in place for them. So it's really about those 4 key things for me: students being loved, valued, challenged, and supported. So that would be the legacy I hope to leave.
Thank you. And in terms of legacy that I'd like to leave, it's as a manager of this community, we offer many different services to many different constituencies and audiences, and I hope that we're able to balance the needs and the services in a way that people are happy, that people continue to feel like this is a great place to live, a great place to work, a great place to visit, and that's really where I want to leave it. From an organizational standpoint, I think that the organization will continue to evolve and strengthen. It's a very strong organization as it is, but my goal is to continue to working on implementing best practices and making it, leave it a little bit better than it was when I got here, at a minimum.
Thank you. Marion Maxwell, a member of the COA board. My question, and maybe it's the elephant in the room, Kelly's Corner. It seems to me, you haven't been here very long, but it seems like you've been getting a running start. And I'm wondering, have you grasped the entire concept of what's going on at Kelly's Corner, and what can you tell us about it moving forward? Thank you.
So, yes, Kelly's Corner is something that the Board of Selectmen identified as the #1 short-term and the #1 long-term goal. So when the board establishes goals, I see that as my roadmap and what I need to work on, and so I'm working on Kelly's Corner. We're working at a staff level to understand what's happened over the last few years, what needs have been expressed, what comments have been provided, and how that can be applied to the design process that the steering committee is working very hard on. We are collaborating with them. We're doing a lot to understand the needs. It's on the TIP, which is the Transportation Improvement Program. The state has it programmed in 2022. So there are various steps that we would need to follow to keep it on that program. And so that's what we're working to do over the next year or so. It's a project that I think has been envisioned for many years. And actually, I tried to build a file, and I found a great history from school children. They put together a beautiful atlas of Kelly's Corner, and it documented all the businesses there, their perceived analysis of traffic and pedestrian issues, and some of the things that they put in that report 30 or 40 years ago, I think we're still talking about now. And so we're working to address those, and I think that we can get there. I think there's a lot of energy going in the right direction, and there's been a lot of great feedback, and we're going to continue to work with that and go through the state's process and have a project that people can be proud of.
John, what ideas do you have to make it easier for seniors to stay in town?
Owning a home tends to be getting more expensive now. And I think one thing that we try to do to help people that are on a fixed income and are trying to carry a house and pay taxes is we provide various property tax relief programs. And our assessor, Brian McMullen, has put together a great guide to describe how each of these programs work. They have a lot of different, the details vary for each one, but they're numerous. The most straightforward one, the easiest one to describe, I know many of you know of, is the tax work program, where you would get paid to work with one of our town departments for a certain number of hours, and that money can be used to offset your tax bill. There's other programs such as deferments and various other abatement type programs that you can apply for depending on, it's a means test. But in the bigger picture, I think another goal of the board is something that we're working on, is to develop more opportunities for affordable housing and focusing on the senior housing portion of that, which would allow people to, if they so desire, stay in town, and by moving into housing that's more affordable. And that's something that is being considered and is a goal of the board. So those are two ways that we're working on that.
Hi, Isha Gangoli. I had a question for John. I think what I'm seeing especially with the construction boom that's going on in our town right now, is that walkability seems to be decreasing just overall. So my first question has to do with what can be done to improve the walkability in the town. And my second question was around all of the gas leaks that have come to light recently. I think for me, particularly just what has happened today with all of the fires in some of the northern suburbs in Boston has caught my attention, and I'm wondering what the town can do about sort of holding the gas companies' feet to the fire to fix these gas leaks. Thank you.
Before I arrived here, there was a group that did some great work on identifying gas leaks in the community, and that work produced a map and sort of a roadmap for the town to work with the utility company as a way to identify this. And I believe we're the only community in the Commonwealth that may have done this. And so we sort of have a sense of where all the leaks are, and now it's just a matter of working with the gas company to get them to address the ones that we think are the most important. But I think we're in a better position because we have that data, and it's less work for them. So I think it's great that it was a citizen-led, student-led, volunteer initiative, and it's a very valuable resource for us. So that's one way that we're doing it. And in addition to that, we are in close coordination with the utility company, so that when we think about road work for the coming year, we make sure that they are very well aware of the projects that we want to do, so that if they have gas in the area, we make sure that they have the opportunity to upgrade their infrastructure while we're doing that work. So in addition to addressing leaks that they know about, we're also making sure that they're upgrading infrastructure while we're doing other work in town. Oh, walkability. So that's something that people love about a community, is if you can walk somewhere. And I think it's an important value that we have a lot of opportunities in this community, more so than others, I think, in the region. I think it's great. There's been a strong advocacy group for sidewalks in the past, and I think it's developed into a pretty good sidewalk network. That being said, there's certainly many areas in town that people would like to have more sidewalks, and that's something that we're going to be talking about throughout the budget process and capital planning. And it's our public works director does a nice job of working with the resources that he has to try to make improvements. There's been some sidewalk work done on High Street recently, and there's been some other things that we're working on throughout the community. So we appreciate any input you have, and we're going to continue to find ways to make pedestrian connections where they exist. And also, we have these great new bike trails, which are also pedestrian trails. And I think a focus of the work that we're doing is to make sure that people that are accessing those amenities can get to them and get from one to the other. So those are some of the things that we're working on.
To follow up on your question, as I did discuss with you before this meeting started, we're going to need to learn from this really tough, catastrophic situation occurring in Lawrence, North Andover, and Andover. And good communication tonight about how communication in this community occurs. And I did a little mini survey of a group of people as this topic came up before we got started, and not one of us had a good idea of exactly what to do if there was perception of gas in our home or in the area. Well, one of the first things you don't want to do apparently is to use your cell phone or your landline or turn on lights or other things like that. I think that's just what I read online, if there is that in your home. So the point is to the community, how do we learn the safety aspects of what may occur? And I did a preliminary search about all the mapping that had been done. It's really fairly extraordinary, and done through the high school, apparently. So learning from this situation and how we extrapolate this in our town, our community, to make it safer and a better process, I think would be something to consider, especially now with the communication modalities that you're talking about for the town.
Thank you for your comments.
Marge Kennedy. I'm sure, even though you've been here a short time, and it's obvious from the questions you've already been asked, that there are many opinions and many expectations laid on your shoulders. What do you do to maintain your own equilibrium and sanity when those shoulders get to go somewhere other than the public eye?
Do you mean what do we do for fun? Is that what you're asking? Yeah, my sleep pattern has changed in the last few months. I can attest to that, but I think it's part of the adjustment. I enjoy spending time with my family. I have three boys, 4, 6, and 8, so they keep us pretty busy when I'm not here. Thanks for asking.
I'll say the same thing. I think I'm really a family person. First and foremost, I have 2 kids. I have a middle school 8th grader son, and then I have a 6th grader who's our dancer in the family, and a daughter. And really, I spend a lot of time at hockey rinks. I spend a lot of time on soccer fields, and I spend a lot of time going to dance recitals. And I wouldn't have it any other way, really. So we're also very excited. Our kids are just getting to the age where they can ski. And we can actually take some ski vacations, and they can be independent, so that's exciting as well.
Hi there. Welcome to both of you, and thanks for doing this tonight. I really enjoyed hearing what you both talked about with your communication plans, and just wanted to underscore, Peter, that I think there's a great appetite in this community for those of us who no longer have kids in the schools to hear from the school district about what's going on. I think in this room you probably have a lot of people who keep up with what's going on with the school committee packet and what's in the Board of Selectmen packet, but I think, again, it would be nice to have more regular communications. Marge did such a nice job giving you a happy thought, and I'm going to take us back down disaster road again. I have very much in my mind today what's going on in the Carolinas, which for me, is only a hop, skip, and a jump to think about how we deal with bad weather disasters around here. And I think one of the things that has come up repeatedly over the last 5-6 years is that we have had some period of extended power outage, and I think there's a great desire to see both town and schools cooperate on what the solutions are for residents. And I wonder whether, as you two have gotten to know each other, whether you've had those conversations about what could happen and how that would be communicated to residents. And if not, could I ask you to add that to your think about it list? So thank you.
So we started the conversation. I had an opportunity, along with some of my central administrators and district staff, to be able to meet with the police chiefs and fire chiefs in both communities and just make sure we were on the same page regarding our safety procedures. I'll be honest, we were more focused on the schools, but we also did talk about shelter opportunities within the community. And I think that's been a learning curve for me that I want to make sure that we tackle early. We know we're starting in the bad weather season. We were just having a conversation earlier this week with our district administration and safety staff about possibly pulling ourselves together for an early meeting based on what we saw the hurricane do, knowing that if it came up the coast, maybe it had wind impact, things like that. So I think, you know, what I've learned over time is that we need to monitor weather well out in advance of that and have good coordinated emergency planning. You know, I know in my previous community, school personnel, we went through the same FEMA training that our town personnel did as well, just to make sure we were on the same page about processes, protocols, who was in charge of various things. And I think communication is the #1 element that has to happen in any type of an emergency situation. You know, particularly intra-organizational communication, so that the police, fire, schools all know what's happening. DPW is a critical element to that. Town administration is also critical because we do have a large population we have to care for in those times. So we will certainly continue communicating around that, but it's something that we've already started as well.
Yes, thanks. And as an event is anticipated, we sort of start to communicate a little bit, and then as it gets closer, we decide what actions we're going to take, and that's a conversation that we have with the emergency management team here in Town Hall and public safety, but also with the school district and other entities in town. So we'll continue to do that, and hopefully we won't have to at all, but we're prepared in the event that we need to.
Okay, we've been going for about an hour now, so I feel like that's a good amount. Thank you all for coming, and thank you both for coming and meeting with us. I'm sure you'll hear more questions and comments from folks, and I don't think we have to rush out, but I'm not sure how long we have the room till. But do feel free to partake of the refreshments and chat some more, and if you think of a question that you didn't get to ask, I'm sure you could get an answer. Thank you.